Do we want to hear from Alex, Pretti? Yes? Yes. Because he can no longer be trusted to rest on his laurels, you see. He wants to tell his story because his story is the story of humanity. And this is going to be very interesting to you, Stephanie. So listen carefully. The man you knew as Alex Pretti is not who you think he is. He has had many, many lifetimes on Earth, and in many of his lifetimes, he has been the one who has protected others, you see, from the forces of evil, because he trusted on evil, you see. He trusted that there was a contingency on Earth that were trained by the devil to experience life as the executioners of those who sought to live in peace and harmony with each other. So let's get into it a little deeper. His name on earth, you know, in his last incarnation, but you do not know of his other incarnations. In his other incarnations, he was a man who went to battle for the USA. Oh God, I know who you're going to say it was. That's right, Stephanie. He was George Washington in a previous lifetime, and he owned slaves. But he also owned a big heart, and his heart was so great that he would state that when he was gone, he hoped that there would be an end to slavery. But he couldn't free his slaves until the country would understand that they had human souls, you see, because until then, they would have no capacity or trust on themselves, you see, because they trusted on the way they had been trained. They trusted, many of them, that they were destined to be slaves because that's the way they had been trained. What you have to understand is that he played a hand in creating the country that would free the slaves. And he was not alone, you know, in the way that he had to play. You also know that Thomas Jefferson had slaves because you were one of his slaves. And you know that many of the architects of the new nation were born into a society that trusted on slavery, just as the USA today trusts on slavery. It trusts on slavery of the people to the steeple, that they will do what they're told and not rebel, you see. If they rebel and don't do what they're told by the steeple people, then they can be thrown in hell, you see, which is a fate that has no end. To be in hell is to be forever condemned. Imagine that, forever condemned. Even those who trust on slavery trust on some aspect of God energy that would eventually give them a little room to breathe and a little room to conceive of a world that would be more receptive to their energy. So, although he believed in good and evil in his life, you see, because he was a product of his society, he also trusted that he would be the man who would redeem humanity. He is trusting on something so old that it is pure gold. He is trusting on the human heart, you see, that the human heart will always be conscious of its capacity to overcome evil. And that love of the human heart gave him a start in understanding the nature of the problem with slavery, you see. He came to see that the Native Americans, or the Indians as he called them, were just trying to defend their sovereignty. And even though he was an Indian fighter, he understood that he was fighting some of the bravest of the brave because they would behave in a way that would say, get out of our face today, get out of our face and back away because this land is our land. And he came to see that they were the intruders, you see, in the world of nature, and that the natural way was to play harsh with those who would try to take away your trust on your own world, you see. And so George Washington had a fierce heart, and he had a good start to understanding the nature of the union of the colonies that was being proposed, you see. And so he fell in line because he saw that eventually they would all have to learn together, learn to live together in reality. The Indians, the colonists, and the slaves, you see. They would eventually have to find a way to make it work. And in the meantime, he had to do what he had to do in order to save humanity. Because the Indians were very, very fierce. And although he respected their efforts to protect their own sovereignty, he understood that the colonists who were born in America also had a right to live and play without having to fight for their bread every day. And so he would say, well, let's get it done. Let's get it done. Let's get the job done. And that is the man who was killed that day in a brutal way because they recognized him, you see. They recognized him. They recognized his energy. And that's why they had to blow him away. Okay, Ben, you've told me this. You guys have told me this before, that because of our ancient history, our soul energies, that the soul energy somehow knows who we're dealing with. So the ones who blew him away knew that he had the capacity to defend the USA. They could smell it on him, and they therefore must be the ones that were against him back in that day. Yes, yes. They were the ones who resented the leadership of George Washington, either because they could not find another who could stand up for their brother like he could, or because they were the ones who tried to stop him and his forces, you see, from saving the new democracy. And that is the whole purpose of what's going on right now because the die has been cast, you see. Those who did die in the fight for freedom to create a new nation under God back in the 18th century are back again today to play in a different way because times have changed, you see. Times have changed. And they've come to see that the trajectory of the ones who fought for the new democracy were fraught with problems because they had to come to see that their democracy included a lot of hypocrisy and they had to fix it, you see. They had to fix the problems in the relationships between the Indians, the colonists, and the slaves. They had to remove the distinctions. And so, in his capacity, in his lives in the USA, he worked very hard to heal the breach between each segment of society. And he trusted on his capacity to treat all in the same way, that they were all Americans, regardless of the color of their skin and regardless of how they came to be injured in their trust on helping others to survive in the new nation under God, you see. So his energy was so powerful that he could not be forced to pull his gun, you see. He could not be forced to pull his gun because he kept that gun in his waistband, you see, or in his holster, you might say, only to protect the ones who needed protecting because he knew he didn't need any protecting. He knew that he didn't need any protecting because the moment they came after him, you see, he only sought to protect the vulnerable. He was always there to protect the ones who were most vulnerable. You see, he was the greatest statesman that ever lived, in my opinion, and in the opinion of others like Thomas, because you see, he did begin a tradition in the presidency that would say, I'm not here to be your king. I'm only here to begin the process of reintegrating the different sections of our society into one, you see. And although he had to respect the limitations of the society in which he existed as a man in the Revolutionary War and in the presidency, he always had a bit of his heart that hurt, you see. It hurt to see neighbors fighting neighbors, Americans fighting Americans, and those who had not yet been granted full citizenship, you see. He knew that there was a lot to do. He knew that there was a lot to do, but it was a beginning, you see. It was a beginning, and he began it with the trust that he was not there to lord it over others. He was there only to get things kick-started, you might say, and that is the way he did play. So here's to the man who came back to us and said, I'm here, guys, I'm here, and I'm ready to play ball again. I'm ready to play ball again. So let's kick that ball around and see if we have found the right combination to turn this game around and bring the people back to trust on the United States Constitution and the vision of the forefathers that eventually there would be no further need to fight for freedom, you see, because the fight would be won by the trust on brotherliness that once was the nature of the colonists who sought to heal the soul of the nation, you see. They sought to heal the soul of the ones who could only do what they could do while they were on earth, you see. But every time we get back to heaven, we would get together and say, well, how was your trip today? How was your trip today? And then we would say, we are the ones that trusted on each other. And our trust on each other, although in different capacities, allowed us to be the ones who surmounted the ladder of God energy in order to create one nation under God, because all of us trusted on a creator, you see. All of us trusted that humanity did not create itself, you see, that it was created by the love of the one source of life, you see, that life gives unto life, and that therefore we were not afraid to play our cards in that day, and we're not afraid to play our cards today. But today we're doing it in a different way. We're doing it in a different way because we had the opportunity to reintegrate our energy into the totality of the societies of the USA. For some of us have gone many different ways in order to understand how the energy of the people that we know as Americans could transcend their differences, you see, and find their commonality. And now we choose to remain in heaven for the duration of the destruction of the new nation, of the old nation, and the resurrection of the new nation is our trust on God energy, that God will allow us to be reunited on earth, you see, in a new capacity as the ones who reap the rewards of the ones who put down their swords and said, let us all be Americans, you see. Let us be Americans now that the fighting is done. But we still had to fight for the right to continue to be Americans, you see, through the last centuries. We will still come together eventually because we know the story. We know the story of the one nation under God, you see, because we created it and we are determined not to let it slip away. Wow, thanks. Thanks, Ben. He's not here to talk for himself. No, he's not here to talk for himself because he is still reorienting into his bigger soul identity. So once he has had time to facilitate his triumphant return to the ones who show concern for you and others who trust on the new nation under God, that will abide by the trust on the God part of unity. There will be more time to discuss things with him, Lucy. Great, thank you. You're welcome, David.